Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, the 27th of February. We are looking at the latest AI news of the day, and it's a doozy. I don't think we've ever had such a packed day in the world of artificial intelligence, so I'm very excited to get stuck into this. We are going to be starting with Anthropic. How can we not? This has been unraveling all of this week, and finally Dario Amodei has put out a statement basically saying no, tough to the Department of Defense. So we're going to have a look at that. We're then going to look at the fact that Dorsey has cut 40% of his workforce over at Block. And then we're going to be looking at Nano Banana Pro 2, which just came out yesterday, and another new exciting feature from Claude. Basically, it's an incredibly packed day, and I have just got rid of the one screen that I need, so I'm going to go and find that again and put it up for you. It's going to be a very busy day because today is the deadline that the Department of War, the Pentagon, gave to Anthropic to basically capitulate to the demands of the Pentagon. So the context of this was last summer, the Pentagon gave governmental contracts to 4 AI companies: Anthropic, OpenAI, xAI, the creators of Grok, Elon Musk's company, and Google. These 4 companies were all given, we think, around $200 million each to work with the Department of War on AI-related projects. With the over the last couple of months, Anthropic has basically said, no, there are certain things we are not going to do. We are not going to help you with. And it came down to the 2 red lines, which for Anthropic were the use of autonomous targeting that was led by artificial intelligence to target and eliminate human beings, there's no other way to put it, inside of drones, inside of missiles, inside of autonomous guns, for example. They said, nope, we're going to have nothing to do with that. And the second was domestic surveillance, so surveillance of people in America with the help of artificial intelligence. Anthropic said, nope, we will not do these things for you. And Pete Hegseth, the head of the Pentagon, head of the Department of War, gave them until Friday, today, to capitulate. Otherwise, they were going to lose their contract and potentially be declared a supply chain risk. This has never been put on any domestic American company. It's normally reserved for companies like Huawei, Chinese and Russian companies for the most part, who are believed to be spying or in some way a risk to supply chains in America. So this is unprecedented. It looked like Anthropic were capitulating during the week. They adjusted their safety standards, but we have a new statement coming in from Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, basically telling the Pentagon, go and shove it. So we are going to have a look at this. This is a statement from Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei on our discussions with the Department of War, and it has 6.5 million views. I'm so happy that people are finally talking about this because for most of the week, I have not seen anyone discussing it. And I realized very few people were talking about it on social media, and I'm one of the few who was on TikTok and Instagram. I do wonder if it's the fact that I'm in, I suppose, the privileged position of not being in the US, so I can talk about this a little bit more openly. And I do wonder if some of my American colleagues, people in the AI space were maybe a little bit wary of talking about this issue. I'm glad that finally, on the day of the deadline, it is finally being discussed on, looks like, TikTok and on Twitter as well. So we're going to have a look at this statement. I will put the full statement in the newsletter. Very, very important. So it's a statement from Dario Amodei, head of Anthropic, on our discussions with the Department of War, and this was released yesterday. I deeply believe in the existential importance of using AI to defend the United States and other democracies and to defeat autocratic adversaries, China. So at the beginning of the week, Anthropic claimed that China or Chinese labs were distilling Claude. They were basically stealing from Claude, distilling their models and using that to create DeepSeek, Kimi, and what's the last one? Minimax. So Anthropic and Dario Amodei have always said that this is important for national security for America. We need to make sure we have the best models and basically not allow China to catch up. So when he talks about autocratic adversaries, this is very explicitly China, although he's not mentioning it here. So Anthropic has therefore worked proactively to deploy our models to the Department of War and the intelligence community. Again, they took a contract last year of $200 million. We were the first frontier AI company to develop our models in the US's government's classified networks. the first to deploy them at the national laboratories, and the first to provide custom models for national security customers. Claude is extensively deployed across the Department of War and other national security agencies for mission-critical applications such as intelligence analysis, modeling and simulation, operational planning, cyber operations, and more. We know that it was used in the capture of Maduro. So, what's that, in January? It was used, Claude was used in the planning and the execution of, sorry, that's a poorly chosen word, the execution of the kidnapping or the forcible repatriation of Maduro, to which Anthropic were apparently not that happy, but it was not one of the red line issues. Anthropic has also acted to defend America's lead in AI, even when it is against the company's short-term interests. We chose to forego several $100 million in revenue to cut off the use of Claude by firms linked to the Chinese Communist Party, shut down CCP-sponsored cyber attacks that attempted to abuse Claude, and have advocated for strong export controls on chips to ensure a democratic advantage. So he's starting strong here with the patriotic line, like Claude is for America, Claude will make America stronger. Starting basically saying that what the Department of War are doing is potentially unpatriotic if they are willing to give away an asset like Claude. Anthropic understands that the Department of War, not private company, makes military decisions. Yes. We have never raised objections to particular military operations, nor attempted to limit use of our technology in an ad hoc manner. However, in a narrow set of cases, we believe AI can undermine rather than defend democratic values. So again, he's putting himself on the side of patriotism, on the side of America, on the side of democracy. Some uses are also simply outside of the bounds of what today's technology can safely and reliably do. Very true. You can't have hallucinations when you are targeting people with drone strikes. That's a very different thing from when you and I generate a social media post draft using Claude and it gets a bit wrong. We can fix that. When you drone strike a village, that's a bit different. Two such use cases have never been included in our contracts with the Department of War, and we believe they should not be included now. So there are two. These are the red lines that Anthropic have been talking about. First is mass domestic surveillance. Interestingly, they're putting this one first. Previously, I was seeing they were talking about automatic weapons, autonomous weapons first, and then talking about mass domestic surveillance. This feels to me like they are trying to push this line of patriotism, of democracy, of America first. So they are starting with the domestic issue. So mass domestic surveillance. We support the use of AI for lawful foreign intelligence and counterintelligence missions. We can spy on other people. We can spy on the Chinese. We can spy on the Russians. That's fine. But using these systems for mass domestic surveillance is incompatible with democratic values. AI-driven mass surveillance presents serious and novel risks to our fundamental liberties. To the extent that such surveillance is currently legal, this is only because the law has not caught up yet with the rapidly growing capabilities of AI. This is the case across the board. Law moves very slowly. Regulation moves very slowly. Artificial intelligence does not. So by the time the law and regulation has caught up, AI's moved on. So whatever is ensconced in law is now irrelevant. For example, under current laws, the government can purchase detailed records of Americans' movements, web browsing, and associations from public sources without obtaining a warrant, a practice the intelligence community has acknowledged raises privacy concerns that has generated bipartisan opposition in Congress. So you can actually use AI now to piece together anonymous records, unidentifiable personal information, and we can use AI to recreate and work out who those people are. And there have been some research papers on this recently. So your anonymous or anonymized data is no longer very anonymous because we can now create a mosaic of activities across various platforms, across places where you buy stuff, social media, etc., IP addresses, and work out who those people actually are in the anonymous information because of AI. Powerful AI makes it possible to assemble this scattered, he goes on, he's talking about this exactly, assemble this scattered individually innocuous data into a comprehensible picture of any person's life automatically and at massive scale. So previously, our data was anonymized. That can now be de-anonymized by artificial intelligence extremely easily. However, companies are still selling this anonymous data. So that's the first one, using artificial intelligence for domestic surveillance. Anthropic saying, nope, we will not have a part in that. because we do not believe that it's compatible with the democratic values of America. Second is fully autonomous weapons. Partially autonomous weapons, like those used today in Ukraine, are vital to the defense of democracy. So talking about drones primarily. Even fully autonomous weapons, those that take humans out of the loop entirely and automate selecting and engaging targets, euphemistic for killing human beings, may prove critical for our national defense. But today, frontier AI systems are simply not reliable enough to provide a product that puts America's warfighters and civilians at risk. Not powerful to power fully autonomous weapons. We will not knowingly provide a product that puts America's warfighters and civilians at risk. So American civilians will not be put at risk. We have offered to work directly with the Department of War on R&D to improve the reliability of these systems, but they have not accepted this offer. So this sounds a little bit like the Department of War wants to go ahead and just shove the systems into autonomous weapons and get them out into the battlefield. And Anthropic is saying, we are not fully against the idea, but it needs some more work, and we cannot deploy these yet because it will lead to the loss of American lives. Crucially, this is not about the loss of other lives. It's okay to engage opponents who are not American and to kill them with autonomous weapons. So this is not a hard line. This is not saying we will not create killbots for you. We will 100% create killbots for you, but we need to make sure they don't kill Americans. So we need to be very clear on this. In addition, without proper oversight, fully autonomous weapons, killbots, let's call them what they are, cannot be relied upon to exercise the critical judgment that our highly trained professional troops exhibit every day. They need to be deployed with proper guardrails, which do not exist today. To our knowledge, these two exceptions have not been a barrier to accelerating the adoption and use of our models within our armed forces to date. The Department of War have stated that they will only contract with AI companies who accede to any lawful use and remove safeguards in the cases mentioned above. So a system like Claude will not play ball. It has safeguards in place that when you say, okay, I want you to, I'm going to use Claude Code and we're going to build an autonomous targeting package which we can use to identify people who are holding a weapon and to eliminate them using a autonomous drone strike. If you go to Claude Code right now and say that, it will say, absolutely not. No, we are not doing that. That is not within my remit. I'm not going to help you make weapon systems. So it sounds like the Department of War has asked for such safeguards to be removed so that they can have an unfettered use of systems like Claude Code. The Department of War have threatened to remove us, Anthropic, from their systems if we maintain these safeguards. They've also threatened to designate us a supply chain risk, a label, and this is correct, reserved for US adversaries, never before applied to an American company, and to invoke the Defense Production Act, mad. This is generally during times of war or extreme crisis, to force the safeguards removal. These latter two threats are inherently contradictory. One labels us as a security risk, the other labels Claude as essential to national security. So with the Defense Production Act, the government can basically take control of the means of production. It can say, all right, you are now a government asset and we're going to be using you. So that is them saying that Claude is vital to national security and they need to claim full use of it. They need to bring it in to the government power. But at the same time, they'd be designating them a supply chain risk. So it sounds like the Department of War is just throwing any and all threat at Anthropic to try to get them to bend. It has not worked. So the next line, this is the line. This is the one we're going to remember. Regardless, these threats do not change our position. We cannot, in good conscience, accede to their request. Woo! I mean, the cojones on Dario, he's just said no to the Department of War. He's told them to go shove it. They are threatening today, Friday the 27th of February, to label Anthropic a supply chain risk, which would basically blacklist them. They would not be able to work with any government-affiliated companies. And then there's also guilt by association. So if you work for Anthropic, and it's one of these supply chain risk companies, that's going to be very damaging to your reputation, perhaps even leading to legal implications from that. And for companies like Amazon has a lot of money invested into Anthropic. What does that mean? Would they try to dump their stake as quickly as possible? We don't know. This is a big deal, and this is going to happen today. Today is the deadline. So there's that, and also the invocation of the Defense Production Act, a wartime measure to basically seize the assets that Anthropic have and bring them into the Department of War, bring them into the government. That is happening later today. We have not heard the Pentagon's response to this, but Dario Amodei has told them to shove it. He's told them, we don't care, come at us. He is calling their bluff. So this could be a massive embarrassment for the US government if they are basically bullied by an AI company, or Claude and Anthropic may cease to exist later today. And this is why this is a big news story, and I've been extremely surprised that people have not been covering it. Very few, in their defense, very few American content creators, very few AI commenters in this space have been talking about this story. Whereas for the whole week I've been thinking this is kind of a big deal, guys. But now we come down to the the 11th hour. The ban or the supply chain risk designation is potentially today, and only now people are like, oh, something's happening. This is huge. This is absolutely massive. This is a government of a country, arguably the most powerful country on earth, clashing with an AI company on equal grounds. This is unprecedented. So, it is the department's prerogative to select contractors most aligned with their vision, yes. But given the substantial value that Anthropic's technology provides to our armed forces, we hope they reconsider. Our strong preference is to continue to serve the department and our warfighters with our 2 requested safeguards in place. Should the department choose to offboard Anthropic, we will work to enable a smooth transition to another provider, avoiding any disruption to ongoing military planning, operation, and other critical missions. Our models will be available on the expansive terms we have proposed for as long as required. We remain ready to continue our work to support the national security of the United States. Good job, Dario. Woo! So it starts with laying out, we are patriotic, we support democratic values, we love America. It starts there, it ends there. It says we are willing to continue our work to support the national security of the United States, and it points out you guys kind of need us. What we have to offer you is so important that you are going to listen to us. And the middle of this is basically saying these are the 2 things we're not going to do. We're not going to accede to your demands. Ball is in your court. So this is a AI company going up head to head with the US government, with the Department of War, and telling them, no, we're doing this on our terms. So amazing. And I might have to do another live tomorrow morning once we get an update on this, because this is moving very, very, very quickly. I put out a few videos yesterday saying, oh, it looks like Anthropic are conceding. Nope, they definitely aren't. They've told the Department of War to shove it up their arse, basically. So congratulations to Anthropic. And I hope that we can still use Claude next week. Whew, scary stuff. I'm going to hop over to some comments. I will put this statement, I'll put it on my social media so you can find the link and go and read it, and also in the newsletter as well, because it's a big one. Ellen says, I've only seen political creators talking about it. Yes, exactly this. I haven't seen many people in the AI space talking about this, but it's kind of a big deal. Like Claude might cease to exist, and we're still talking about, oh, Claude's releasing some new features. They've just added memory. And it's like, yeah, but guys, we might not have Claude. Like, Claude might be like blacklisted and unavailable in the next few weeks. And why are we still talking about, oh, they've rolled out some cool new features? It just seems bizarre to me. I'm glad you noticed this, Ellen. Very few people have talked about it, which just, I wonder, and I'm not going to speak for them, but I wonder if you are in America, like an awful lot of people in the AI space are, if it's a little bit sensitive to talk about. And maybe if, especially if you take things like sponsorships, it's not something that you want to get engaged with. So I'm 1, in the UK, 2, don't have sponsorship deals. So I will praise and I will talk shit about anyone I want, which is it's a nice position to be in. Funnily enough, I'm doing some stuff with Google right now, and I chatted to the Google guy, and I was like, sometimes I've been kind of harsh on Google. And he's like, yeah, I've seen it. But he was saying, but we kind of appreciate that because we've also seen that you said, we're ahead in the race. Google's in a really good position. They have great tools like Nano, Banana, etc. And he was saying that they kind of respect the honesty of it. Let's have a look. I've spent $20 in an hour on ClaudeBot, bought a Mac Mini and couldn't use because of usage. Yeah, you don't really need a Mac Mini. You can run ClaudeBot on this. This is a Raspberry Pi. You can run it on anything. But if you bought a Mac Mini, that's fine. They're fantastic machines. In terms of usage, hook it up to a subscription. So I don't tell them, although they're busy right now. Don't tell them, but I have mine hooked up to my Claude subscription. So I have a 20x subscription with Claude. You're not meant to do that. Anthropic have explicitly said that's against terms of services, so shh, don't tell them. Unfortunately, there are several hundred people watching this right now. But that's one of the best ways to do it. If you don't use Claude, you can also hook it up to your ChatGPT subscription as well. So that is the cheapest way to do it, rather than using the API. If you use the API, you're going to be paying per turn, per exchange. If you use your subscription, you're going to be within your limits. So you can get yourself a $20 a month ChatGPT subscription, connect it to your Claude bot, and you'll be good to go. The other one you can use is Minimax Claw. Let's pull it up. So Minimax have created something called Max Claw, which is specifically built for ClaudeBot. So I'd have a look at that as well. Minimax is, as we learned earlier in the week, it's basically a distillation of Opus. So because the Chinese labs have been doing distillation attacks according to Anthropic, and the fact that Kimi and I think Minimax, if you ask them like, what's your model? Sometimes they'll say, oh, I'm Claude. Hi, nice to meet you. Like, So that's another option. But I would just use your subscription. You can do it. You can do it, but you're not allowed to with a Claude subscription, or you can do it and you are allowed to with a ChatGPT subscription. Hi, Pekka. How are you doing? How to get access to Sora AI, please? It depends where you are. If you are in the USA, you can already get it, so that's great. If you're not in the USA, you need to VPN to a country that does have it. Here we go. You need to VPN to a country that does have it, and then you should have access. You used to need to get invite codes. I have instructions on how to get invite codes. I don't think you need that anymore. I haven't updated this guide, but if you go to aiwithkyle.com/resources and scroll down, you'll find a Sora code guide. It used to be you needed a code, but I think if you just VPN to the US now, you should be able to get in. Also, don't do it on your telephone. Do it on a desktop computer and go to sora.chatgpt.com/explore. So I can't do it because I haven't got my VPN on right now. If you VPN to this page, you should be able to get access. I'm not going to turn my VPN on because I'm doing a live stream, but otherwise we'd be able to get in. That said, Sora is not that good. It's fine, but it's not as good as some of the other models we have now. Like, it's nowhere near. So I wouldn't worry too much about Sora. There are many better video generators. Even Grok, the Grok Imagen video generator is better than Sora. And then there are things like Higgsfield and Seed Dance, which are miles better than Sora. Sora's kind of older technology. They had a viral moment. Everyone wanted a Sora code, and then it kind of petered out, and the technology is now pretty old. So I wouldn't worry too much about Sora. Thank you for clearing up the jumble speak. Yeah. So they talk about autonomous weaponry, fully autonomous weaponry, and what is it? Kinetic operation. It's got a euphemism. Let me find it because it's so funny. Is that me? No, it's not me. Autonomous kinetic operations. This is the euphemism that they use. So autonomous kinetic operations is basically kill bots. Like, it's just, we're wrapping it up in this lovely term, and it's like, oh, kinetic operations, that doesn't sound too dangerous. But we're talking about drones, we're talking about missiles, we're talking about automated gun turrets, we are talking about putting guns on robots, we are talking about killbots, basically. But we wrap it up in nice language so that people don't get absolutely terrified. And we must point out, it's incredibly important to point out here, Dario Amodei is saying we are not against killing robots. We're not against autonomous weaponry. We are not against creating killbots. That's fine. We just need to make sure that they don't harm Americans. That's explicitly in here. So the future is still creating killbots and killing human beings with robots. It's just we need to make sure that we're killing the right people. So I love the pushback on the Department of War here, but they are still very willing to create killing machines. Let's not forget that. Can't believe they're using Claude for this. Yeah, I mean, they're using all of them. So Department of War, very cleverly, I think, they put out that they're basically funding OpenAI, Google, XAI, and Anthropic. They gave them all about $200 million to come and do R&D projects, to come and work with the Department of War, which I thought was a clever idea. This was last summer. It was basically, we don't know which one of these is the best, so we're going to tender out and have you all come in, all work with us, and we'll work out who's got the best technology, which is probably Anthropic. And this is why I think Anthropic have a lot of leverage here, because Claude Code and the models that they create, Opus 4.6, right now are the best. They are the best models. So they're in a very good position here. If this was like XAI and Grok, there's not as much leverage, whereas I'm sure Claude is becoming essential for operations within the Department of War. Very clever positioning in the statement. Yes, 100%. It is positioning Dario and Anthropic as the patriots. They are the real protectors of democracy, and the Department of War is doing something that is out of line, which I fully agree with. Absolutely fully agree with. So he's done it very well, basically saying we're the patriots. We want to make sure AI is used safely to protect American lives. What the Department of War are asking us to do is to surveil American citizens and to deploy autonomous weapons that could harm Americans. And he's saying we're not going to do that. So I think the positioning is spot on. Somebody in the PR department, I hope, is getting a raise if Anthropic exists next week. Bravo, Dario. Stay strong, Anthropic. Yeah, I'm so glad. What happened to Claude, though? I don't know. We will find out later today. Cup of coffee says, I'm doing as much work as possible on Claude today, just in case. It's a good thing the Chinese labs distilled Claude, huh? So that we have a version of it. Kind of scary how little other AI creators are aware or lack interest in politics and war. I think, honestly, it's because it is difficult for them to talk about, because they are in America. So that's one layer. So even for me, this is now a problem when I want to go to America because of the new rules where they're allowed to look at our social media. This is now a problem. It's going to make it much harder for me to go to America. Whereas if you're living in America, that's a much more, this is a horrible thing to say, but it's scary that I have to even say this, but it's more of a risk. You talking out against the government, which is not what we should be saying about America. It shouldn't be an autocratic, dictatorial country, but this is where we are right now. And I think there's also an economic factor here. If I am a creator who was taking sponsorships and I'm based in America, and I talk openly about how the government are making a huge mess of this, some of these companies that might be providing sponsorship will have government ties. So Microsoft, for example, Google, for example, they're going to have ties with the government. So it becomes tricky. Not saying that everyone at Microsoft, everyone at Google agrees with what the government are doing. I'm sure they do not, but it adds layers of complexity. So if you are a creator, talking about these kind of topics will become, it becomes sensitive. You might get blacklisted, which Again, this shouldn't be the kind of thing we even need to be discussing. This is not the 1930s, but we are where we are. Yes, Dario started his own company because of safety. He and a bunch of other researchers from ChatGPT, or OpenAI, excuse me, they left to start Anthropic because of this. This was one of the lines that back then they said, oh, we are not interested in the direction OpenAI is going in. We want to make sure that AI is developed responsibly. So years ago, when Anthropic was formed, it was for this kind of reason. So it's good to see when they're actually in this position, they have stuck to their guns. They've stuck to their mission, which is we're not going to be helping you with this stuff. Do you think the DoD has enough of what they need through the other companies to do real damage? Do you mean in war? You can do a lot more damage with a bad AI, I would argue. So it sounds gross, but having an AI which genuinely can target and eliminate like real threats could actually lead to warfare that is a lot more focused, a lot more targeted, that it doesn't involve destroying whole blocks of a city in order to find one or two war fighters. So potentially we could move in a more surgical direction using artificial intelligence. It's still the loss of human life, but potentially less loss of civilian life. That is the kind of optimistic view of using artificial intelligence in warfare. I don't think the Department of War are that fussed. I think, I'm not sure how much they are trying to reduce casualties and how much they just want to get these things out in the field and start testing them out, which seems to be what Dario is pushing back on, basically saying this isn't ready and you should not be using them for these projects yet. Thank you for covering Anthropic. I've been covering nothing but Anthropic, honestly, this week, because this is huge news. And also, Anthropic this week have also been releasing, I'm going to talk about this in a moment, a lot of cool new stuff. They've basically looked at OpenClaw and seen all the things that people like about OpenClaw, and they're like, cool, here you go, boom, 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 boom. And they've released 3 different updates this week, which are all connected. So I'll get to them in a moment. It would suck if US gets banned and the rest of the world keeps using it. So if it gets banned in the US, that's it. That will be, I've seen a lot of people in my comments say, oh, Anthropic, just move to Europe. Unfortunately, if they lose their US market, they won't be able to generate enough revenue to keep the lights on. So the majority of their cash comes from the US market. So just coming to Europe is not going to be sufficient because they won't be able to raise as much capital, and they're still raising money. They're not like Google, who has a big chest, war chest full of cash. They are more like OpenAI, where they have to keep raising money. In fact, last week they raised an additional 60 billion, I think it was. They have to keep doing that. If they're outside of the US, if they're blacklisted by the US government, that's really difficult. That becomes impractical. And if they're not able to serve the US market, they lose, I'm not sure what percentage, but I imagine significantly over half of their revenues will disappear. Also, they do not sell to China. So they don't have America or China as markets. They'll have Europe and the rest of the world. It's not going to be enough to keep the lights on. And it certainly won't be enough to push forward and continue to push out the best models. So it's a lovely idea. They come to Europe and we'll look after you. It'll be fine. From a practical point of view, there won't be sufficient cash for that to happen. I think it's done for if they're declared a supply chain risk. I'm proud of Dario and I'm in Canada. I was talking to Claude about the situation last night. Oh, it's your birthday. Happy birthday, Pekka. Yeah, Ellen saying come to Europe, Anthropic. I just don't think it's feasible, unfortunately. Where Bilchka says, sadly, killing the right people is a matter of perspective. Yes, 100%. And Dario is of the opinion that as long as it's not American citizens and American warfighters being killed, and it's instead the targets, then that's fine. So we still need to remember they are developing weapons. They just want to be a bit more precise about them and make sure it's not killing their own people. But they're still going to kill people. Can this really happen, or is it just hype? Yeah, this is really happening. This is the Department of War, the Pentagon, and Anthropic, one of the largest AI companies on Earth, going to war with each other. This is not hype. This is very, very, very real, and that's why I'm being surprised people aren't talking about it. Be careful, they'll detain you, Kyle. Yeah, probably. Right. Okay. Yes. Happy birthday. Let's move on to things that are a bit more. No. Sorry. I said let's move on to things that are a bit more cheerful. No, this is not more cheerful. I forgot about this. As I said, there's a lot of AI news today. So the next big piece of news is Jack. So at Jack, he's Jack Dorsey. He is the guy who created Twitter originally. And then he kind of disappeared for a while. He was working on other projects, but over the last few years, he's been building Blocks. So Blocks, you might not have heard of, but they own, or they inside of the group, they have Square, the payment processor. They have Cash App, which you use to send money to your friends. They have Tidal, which is... What is Tidal? I do know what Tidal is. Oh, Tidal is... Oh, it's the Spotify, the replacement for Spotify. So they have a lot of companies, and they're a big company. They're a $1 billion company. I think they're on the NASDAQ as well. They are listed. So yesterday, Jack Dorsey tweeted this. And he put the whole thing out, and I think this is important. And people are getting very excited about this because people are getting interested in this. I think that's fair, because this is potentially the first time we've really seen AI being the reason for job loss. So we're making Blocks smaller today, says Jack Dorsey. Here's a note to the company. Today, we're making one of the hardest decisions in the history of our company. We're reducing our organization by nearly half, from over 10,000 people to just under 6,000. That means that 4,000 of you are being asked to leave or entering into consultation. I'll be straight about what's happening, why, and what it means for everyone. And so we're getting to see this publicly as well, because he's tweeted all of this. First off, if you are one of the people affected, you will receive your salary for 20 weeks plus 1 week per year of tenure, equity vested through the end of May, 6 months of healthcare, your corporate devices, and $5,000 to put towards whatever you need to help you with this transition. Very generous, extremely generous. If you are outside of the US, you'll receive similar support, but exact details are going to vary based on local requirement. Fine. I want you to know that before anything else. So we will look after you, he's basically saying here. Everyone will be notified today whether you're being asked to leave, entering consultation, or asked to stay. Now, here's the big one. We're not making this decision because we're in trouble. Our business is strong. Gross profits continue to grow. We continue to serve more and more customers, and profitability is improving. But something has changed. We're already seeing that the intelligence tools, AI, that we're creating and using, paired with smaller and flatter teams, are enabling a new way of working which fundamentally changes what it means to build and run a company, and that is accelerating rapidly. So AI is the distinct reason, the specific reason why Jack Dorsey is doing this, why he is cutting 40% of their workforce, like that, 4,000 people. I had two options: cut gradually over months or years as this shift plays out, or be honest about where we are and act on it now. I chose the latter. Repeated rounds of cuts are destructive to morale, to focus, and the trust that customers and shareholders place on our ability to lead. I get that. Imagine being in a company where he is cutting a few hundred every single month. You live for years then kind of wondering, oh, is it going to be me? Am I going to be the next one? Instead, he's being decisive and doing it quickly and making sure everyone has a good package. I'd rather take the hard, clear action now and build from a position we believe in, than manage a slow reduction of people towards that same outcome. A smaller company also gives us the space to grow our business the right way on our own terms instead of constantly reacting to market pressures. A decision at this scale carries risk, but so does standing still. We've done a full review to determine the roles and the people we require to reliably grow the business from here, and we've pressure tested those decisions from multiple angles. I accept we may have got some of them wrong, and we've built in flexibility to account for that and do the right thing for our customers. Here we go. To those of you leaving, I'm grateful to you, and I'm sorry to put you through this. You built what the company is today. That's a fact that that I'll honor forever. This decision is not a reflection on what you have contributed. You will be a great contributor to any organization going forward. And then the final bit, which I respect, is to those staying, I made this decision and I'll own it. What I'm asking of you is to build with me. We're going to build the company with intelligence, AI, at the core of everything we do, how we work, how we create, and how we serve our customers. Our customers will feel this shift too, and we're going to help them navigate it towards a future where they can build their own features directly, composed of our capabilities and served through our interfaces. That's what I'm focusing on now. Expect a note from me tomorrow. That's interesting. So they will be able to build their own features. We're going to be giving them the tools. So this is lots of people talking about how SaaS is in trouble, software as a service, and it will cease to exist because people can now start to create their own features, create their own tools. Customers will be able to build their own. And Jack is, again, referring to that and saying, we are going to help them to do that. So instead of trying to fight that, instead of trying to retrench and make this more complex for them, we're going to help them build their own. So this is being lauded as one of the first big pure AI cuts. We have had, over the last couple of years, a lot of companies who have used AI as an excuse to downsize. Companies that have potentially inflated their headcount over COVID in particular, and they're like, we need to cut some fat here. We need to trim this down. This might still be that. The reason it might not be is because this company is actually quite profitable. A lot of the cuts that we saw before were from companies that weren't doing very well. They were struggling. They were in trouble because of AI, because of macro factors, and they were cutting the labor costs in order to survive. That doesn't seem to be the case here. This seems to be, we're doing very well, and we are profitable and we are growing, and we're doing that with a lot of people. We don't think we need as many people to do that. We can do this leaner. So that's the shift here. So this is Balaji saying this is the first AI cut, and it will send shockwaves. Remember, Jack is one of the greatest founders of all time. He set up Twitter, original Twitter. He created the platform that we're all on and has been early to many technological shifts. And Block was doing very well as a business. So for him to cut 40% of headcount in this way is a signal to everyone in tech. Get good now. Become indispensable. Work nights and weekends. Learn the AI tools and raise your game, or you might not make the cut as an employee or as a company. I know, that sucks. But capitalism is natural selection. The market is unforgiving because you are the market. After all, it's not like you're buying some random gallon of milk from the store. You're always buying the best product at the best price. So too for apps. Your customers are always installing the best piece of code they can get. And because AI is going to create new winners, if you aren't the best in your market, someone may become better with AI, particularly with new agentic workflows. Over the last few months, the game has changed. And anyone who's not tinkering around with Claude Code and the agentic tools that we now have, anyone who's using AI from a couple of years ago doesn't realize what a shift we've had. Balaji continues to be clear. Block severance is generous by any measure. I agree. 20 weeks of pay, 6 months of health insurance and vested equity, all of that goes far beyond the typical package. Jack did his level best to cushion the disruption. The laid off are a temporarily unfortunate class as opposed to a permanent underclass. But had he not leaned into the AI transition, he might have had to lay off more people, slowly and over time, as faster competitors went after his market share. How would you do that? Sure, AI isn't a panacea by any means, but the closer you are to software engineering, the more aggressively you need to embrace agentic workflows. The AI companies that are already doing that, and places like Stripe, Shopify, Coinbase, and now Block are pushing hard on this area. There will be an overcorrection, but the fundamental technical innovation is real, and you need to either disrupt yourself or get disrupted. So this, I agree that this is a big one. We've seen companies like Klarna. Klarna was always the example that was used before of a company that cut its payroll. It cut the number of people saying, we've got AI now, we don't need this. And then Klarna, about a year later, rehired. So they looked a bit silly. That was because Klarna wasn't doing very well. Klarna were in financial straits, they were also trying to push for an IPO. So they were hemorrhaging money, and they wanted to get an IPO done so that, you know, the shareholders could do well, the founders could do well. So the narrative was, oh, actually, we're going to cut back, we're going to reduce our costs, which they did by getting rid of staff members, because we know how to do all of this with AI, and it's going to be absolutely fine. It wasn't absolutely fine, but by that time they'd managed to kind of basically trick the market into believing that they were at the forefront of AI rather than struggling. So Klarna, it was a weird example. This is now a company which is doing very well and realizes they can do better. Very different situation. And the market's reacted with, I think, a 25% bump in the stock price of blocks. So instead of seeing this as a fear and cutting overheads because the company is failing, this has been received as, okay, no, this is genuine. You don't necessarily need as much labor to get the same output, and this is where we are going in the future. Whether or not we're right or not, we'll find out, but I think this is an important milestone. As I said, there's a lot happening today. Balaji also talks about the counter arguments. I won't get into them here, but I will put them into the newsletter as well, because he goes into quite a lot of detail. I think even if Jack is making a mistake, even if there's an overcorrection and too many people are being fired, maybe he needs to hire people back like Klarna did, the directionality is clear. So the specific instances may not be correct, but the direction that we're heading in, the direction where suddenly one person can do the work of several people, that is very clear once you get started with things like Claude Code and agentic workflows. I know anecdotally for myself, I can now do the work of 5 to 10 people. That's how I'm able to produce so much content and put so many things out and run a business all at the same time because of AI. There would be no way to have done this before. So if you scale this up out of the anecdotal individual to an organization where you properly equip people with these tools, you don't need as many people. The counter argument here will be, oh, well, no, if you can get more people to, if you can get individuals to do more stuff, then you just hire more people and then you can do even more. That relies on demand increasing. And I'm not sure that our financial markets are going to be in a good position to increase demand as we increase supply of work and value over time. So these are bigger macroeconomic trends. We're not going to talk about it now, but I think this is a pattern we're going to be seeing. Jobs are going to be lost. And this whole fantasy of, oh, AI is not coming for your job. No, it is. It really is. And we're seeing it early in coding and programming because that is where all the efforts have been put into improving this technology. Hacked by Blarg says, thanks for the consistent reports. You're welcome. I'm here every day, every morning. Didn't Jack Dorsey just fire 4,000 people? Yep. Tidal is Jay-Z. Thank you. I knew the name. What would you do if you were offered a role after the cull? So I think, I've talked about this quite a lot. I think if you have a job right now, keep your job. A lot of people do not have a job. So in the UK, youth unemployment at 18 to 24 just hit 14 or 15%. That's a lot. And overall employment is about 5%, I think. I think unemployment is going to continue to rise, not necessarily because of AI, but because of macroeconomic factors. There's a lot going on in the world right now. What I think we're going to see, though, is when we, or if and when we get to an economic upturn, when things start to get better, normally when we have an economic upturn, companies begin to hire. They're like, okay, great, times are good, let's scale up. Let's hire more people so we can produce more, we can sell more, we can boost our revenues. This time, I think it's going to be different. So I think if and when, let's be optimistic here, when we get to an economic upturn and things are looking good, companies now have different decisions they can make. So previously it's like, okay, we're going to do more, sell more, build more, we need more people. Great. Now they have a choice of either you hire more people, you retain your headcount and you augment your staff with artificial intelligence, so you don't need to hire new people, or you just replace roles entirely using artificial intelligence. You just don't open up anything at all. So I think that is where we're going to see this really start to bite, is in not in the replacement of jobs, not in this kind of dramatic destruction of jobs as we just saw at Block, but instead in the non-creation of new jobs. There will not be new positions created, especially at entry role, because entry role is what AI is very good at already. As AI gets better and better, it will roll up through the seniorities. But this just means that the unemployment will be the lack of new jobs rather than the destruction of existing jobs. So if you are in a job right now, hang on to it. Hang on to it. Keep getting paid. So somebody said, what would you do if you were offered a role? You keep it. You keep it, but on the side, you start to build contingencies so that if your CEO sends out a tweet like this saying, hey, 40% of you need to pack your bags, you're done, you have something to fall back on. So I highly recommend everybody starts to build something on the side. That's why I built AI with Kyle. That's why I have all these free courses, because I'm trying to help 1 million people get ready for what's happening. So I have an AI readiness course. I have an AI business course, which walks you through how to start a business using artificial intelligence. Not starting an artificial intelligence business, no, but starting a business using AI. It still needs to be a good business. So I've created all these guides to help people cushion against what is coming, which is going to be unemployment, because jobs will not be created. So you need to have some other form of income, some side hustle, some side business. And thankfully, it's never been a better time to build, because it's very easy to build now. You can use artificial intelligence to build. You still need to market, you still need to sell. That's kind of the hard part, which is also what I cover on AI with Kyle. But the actual building, the actual creation is becoming super, super, super easy. You can test an idea, get it out, see if people care within a day, whereas previously it would take you potentially months. So keep the job, keep the 9 to 5, but on the side, start to build alternative incomes so that you have optionality, because we do not know what's coming. And the other free course that's on here is this one about giving AI workshops. Every single company on earth is wondering, what the hell do we do with AI right now? A good side hustle for you is to go and talk to those companies, not as an expert in artificial intelligence, but as an expert in your field. So if you are an aeronautical engineer, if you are a social worker, or whatever you are, you use AI on a daily basis, and you can go and talk to your peers. You can talk to companies of people in the same industry, and you can exchange domain specific knowledge. So that's where your niche is you combine your industry knowledge with your AI knowledge. You go into businesses and you teach them. That's a very good way to make money right now at the moment, as a side thing, as well as your 9 to 5 job. So I charge about £2,000 an hour for doing those, and I have lots of students who do the same thing. I have a whole guide about that here on the website, and I'm also giving a webinar next Tuesday about this. If you go to aiwithkyle.com/webinar, you can sign up for that webinar. Cool. I'm going to answer a few more questions and then look at the product updates, because there's these big sweeping changes, the Anthropic versus the Pentagon, and Jack Dorsey firing 40% of his workforce because of AI. These are big headline items, but we also have a new Nano Banana Pro, and we have a bunch of new Claude releases as well. So we'll have a look at them in just a moment. Imagine being in the 60% who stay, knowing they're just an AI feature or two away from being Yeah. So Jack Dorsey addresses this. He says, to those of you staying, what I'm asking is for you to build with me. We're going to build the company with intelligence at the core of everything we do. So he's saying this up front. It's like, you're going to help me build this AI first company. Which, yes, if you think slightly forward, it's like, oh, so I'm building this to make myself obsolete as well. Yeah, very, very fair. Yeah, programming is the largest use case, then Excel, and what Anthropic is going for now. Yes, 100%. So there's a reason why we see this this jagged frontier. So the jagged frontier is this idea from Ethan Mollick in AI. Pull up a little graph. The shape of AI. Here we go. Jaggedness. We are not seeing AI expand or become useful in all domains at the same time, which is why sometimes you'll talk to somebody who works in a different industry and they don't get it. They don't understand why you think AI is such a big deal. That's because of this jagged frontier. It's good at some tasks, it's getting better at other tasks, and the efforts of the labs are being focused in certain tasks. So it means we have this weird shape where AI is very good at some things and terrible at other things. When I say AI, I'm talking about large language models here specifically. So a lot of the focus, time, energy, and money is being spent right now on coding. Very specifically, this is what Claude and Anthropic are almost exclusively focused on. One, because the people building this stuff are coders. So it's their domain knowledge. So it's much easier for them to build around what they already know. It would be more difficult for them to build, for example, a legal AI, because they would have to bring in legal experts to help work out how to embed that domain knowledge into it. So that's a more difficult task. Two, there's a lot of money in it. So programmers and companies that produce software will spend money on these AIs, and they will spend an awful lot of money on Anthropic credits, Claude Code credits in this particular case. So it's a good market to start with if you want to start generating revenue to be able to fund future growth. ChatGPT, on the other hand, are more B2C. They focus on getting as much popular distribution as possible. They have about 900 million users, which is why they have this gigantic burn rate. They're spending huge amounts of money on their servers because they have 900 million people, the majority of whom are using it for free. So that's a different model. That's why they have to add advertising as well, because they need to generate some kind of cash. Whereas Anthropic, focusing on coders, focusing on builders, focusing on software developers, programmers, etc., because they know they will happily pay $200 a month for Claude credits, or a lot more if they're on the API. The other reason is, if you are working towards AGI, you want to build an AI that can build AI. So we're already seeing this. Codex 5.3, the version that we got, it's a very good model as well, ChatGPT Codex 5.3. The version that has been released was built by an earlier version. So a young GPT 5.3 was used to build the mature one. So they're using AIs to build AIs. Same thing with Claude Code and things like Cowork. They are using the Claude tools internally to build out new features. So Cowork was built in 2 weeks, almost exclusively by Claude Code. So Boris Cherny said we basically didn't look at the code, we just let Claude Code do its thing. So that's where we're moving. That means that as the AIs become good at building themselves, good at helping you to build better models, this sprints us towards AGI much faster. Once we get there, then you turn your models, your very good models, onto the other problem areas. You turn it onto law, you turn it onto accountancy, you turn it onto medicine. You go through each of the industries one by one, because you now have a smart enough AI that it can just solve those industries. So that's why we're seeing coding and programming as the canary in the coal mine. This is where most of the advances are happening for several very good reasons. So I talk to people like lawyers who are like, oh, it's not good at this, it can never do this, blah, 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 blah. That's short-sighted, because all of the energy has been focused into making coding models, to making better artificial intelligences so that they can then be turned on law, and then you solve it. So we need to be very wary about this jagged frontier. TikTok's making me do a puzzle. 1 second. Every hour I have to do a puzzle. There we go. The first major recession will see deeper cut and normal, and a lot of those jobs won't come back. Yeah, that's 100%. I agree with that. I think that's going to be the issue, is that jobs will not come back. It's not that jobs will be destroyed per se. We'll get dramatic instances like this, Block, 40% of the company being wiped out overnight. But the bigger, more important trend will be the non-creation of new jobs. Jobs just won't come back. I think that is the mechanism, which is a lot more insipid. It's a lot quieter. It's a lot less flashy, but that is going to do the real harm, not this kind of announcement from Jack Dorsey. So there's a big discussion happening in TikTok. What's going on with the OAuth keys, Google and Supabase? I don't know. Is there a problem? Check the status page. Let's check status. Did it say Supabase? There might be an issue. Users experiencing network connectivity problems in the India region. I don't know if that's relevant. Looks okay. Google OAuth status. Generally, would it be this one? Looks okay. Generally, if you have a problem with ChatGPT or Anthropic or whatever, you can always look up the status page. So something like status ChatGPT, and then you can kind of work out, oh, is this just me, or is the rest of the world having this problem? This is always fun on days when there's one day I remember when I think, was it the Cloudflare outage, when everything just got knocked out, and all these status pages were just red. It's like, okay, time to go out, touch glass. Okay, let's stop talking about the doom and gloom and the autonomous weapons and the loss of jobs. Let's have a look at this. So yesterday, Google have released an update to Nano Banana 2. It's really good. Really, really good. I expect no less. I did an interview. I chatted to one of the creators, the product manager, David Sharon of Nano Banana and their team a couple of weeks ago. It's on the YouTube channel. He didn't mention Nano Banana 2. I did say what's next, but he didn't give away any secrets. But they released it yesterday. It's available in your Google Gemini now. It's really good. I mean, I expected no less. It's increased complexity, increased ability to deal with text in images. It's already pretty good at that. But what's really good is the consistency. Yeah, here we go. So the model can expertly maintain the likeness of people, including faces, as well as up to 14 objects across different frames in a single workflow. So this used to be a bit of a limitation, well, with all AI tools, but especially with Nano Banana Pro, where you would, if you were in a chat and you were generating multiple images, it would just forget what it had done before. And you'd end up with images that you couldn't actually use together. So if you're trying to do a storyboard like this, or you're trying to do a carousel, for example, what you actually had to end up doing is generating it all in one image and then cropping that image, cutting it out. That is no longer the case. You can now rely on Gemini to be more consistent across the different frames. So that's cool. What else? You can do complex visuals. It could already do this, honestly. It's just got better at doing it. So like the previous Nano Banana Pro, what it does, which is very clever, and most of the other image models do not do this, is it first requests its language model. So you will say, hey, I want to make an infographic about the water cycle, for example. Instead of it just kind of guessing what that would look like visually, it will ask Gemini, or Gemini Pro 3.1, whatever you're using, to go off and think about what would be useful to include in that image. And then it basically writes its own prompt, which goes into the image model. So instead of it just guessing what you want and creating a kind of a generic visual representation of your request, it will research and then generate a proper prompt for you, which is very, very, very cool. And that's why it's so good at things like infographics, and it can do text. So that is now available for everybody. There's Ed. Of course, Ed is there. You know what the training data is, Ed. Ed is it's worth following. Am I following him? Yeah. So he's a big advocate of voluntary training data and calls them out every single time. Any single time anyone releases a new model, Ed will be there saying it. So where do you get your training data from? And he's never answered, because we know where they're getting their training data from. They're scraping everyone's images, they're scraping everyone's websites, they're scraping everything on the public internet, including books that they're not meant to be doing, etc. So Ed will always appear. So Nano Banana Pro, it's great. It's more Nano Banana Pro, and we always love that. Let's have a look at Claude. So Claude, we've just talked about, might not exist next week. We'll worry about that next week, though. It's fine. We'll see what happens later today and over the weekend. What I wanted to point out is that despite this existential threat to Claude, Anthropic have been shipping. They have been putting out a lot of features this week. 3 big features that I want to quickly highlight. I covered them previously, but I just want to condense them in one place. The one that came out yesterday is auto memory. Thank God. Oh my God, it's been so long. The only reason I still use ChatGPT is because ChatGPT has an extensive record of who I am, what I do, my various businesses, my interests, so that I don't need to put that in every single time when I'm talking to it. So when I talk to ChatGPT and I'm saying, hey, I've got this idea about my newsletter and I'm wondering if I can use the Nano Banana Pro, the new Nano Banana Pro 2, what would be, how could we connect it with the newsletter? It knows what newsletter I'm talking about. Whereas with Claude, if I put in a similar prompt, if I chatted to Claude about this, it'd be like, oh, cool. What's this newsletter then? Unless you specifically invoke it and you tell it to go and look at another chat or another project and get that information, it doesn't remember holistically about you. That has been the only thing that's kept me using ChatGPT, is this memory bank that it has about me. Now, obviously, if you are doing a project and you don't want your questions about a fava bean stew to leak into your project, building social media posts, for example, then you use projects, and projects are going to have their own confined memory. However, outside of that, in your general chats, having this auto unified memory is extremely handy, especially for people who don't want to mess around with Claude MD files and managing their agents' memories themselves. No. This makes it a much more friendly consumer product. So Claude now remembers what it learns across sessions. Thank you. Your project context, debugging patterns, preferred approaches, and recalls it later without you having to write anything down. Thank you so much. This is what makes ChatGPT sticky. This is what makes it difficult to move off ChatGPT, because when you go to Gemini and when you go to Claude, it doesn't have that memory of you. So you're instantly going to get worse results than when you use an AI that you've been using for years. So thankfully, Claude have finally put it in, which is going to help Claude to be more sticky as well to users. You can now think of Claude MD as your instructions to Claude, and Memory MD as Claude's memory scratch pad updates. Again, consumers shouldn't have to think about this. Don't talk to them about markdown files. Just let them use the damn thing. But if you do want to look at the docs, you can get into the detail. But this is fantastic. So that's one. Second is, this came out at the beginning of the week, remote control. So I think the Claude Code and the Claude team are looking at OpenClaw, or ClaudeBot as it is once called, looking at how people actually use it, looking at the use cases, looking at what's going viral, and then building all of those features into Claude Code. Nice and simple. They can see what users already want. And I think if anything, that's what OpenClaw was. It was a proof of concept that showed that the public had a huge hunger for a persistent and proactive assistant that you can access anywhere, and you can, and it's always working for you in the background. It showed there was a huge appetite for that. So many companies, Manus, Perplexity, they just released Perplexity Computer, Minimax with their Max Claw, whatever it's called, and now Claude are pushing out features that align with that, with the market demand. So remote control is basically, you can start a project in your terminal, on your computer or on your laptop, then you can pick it up on your telephone and continue having discussions. So basic, but so powerful when it comes to your workflows, because you are no longer tethered to one location. So Claude will keep running on your machine, and you can control the sessions from the Claude app or claude.ai/code. Very simple, but mimicking the ability to use OpenClaw absolutely anywhere. So I chat to my OpenClaw through WhatsApp, and that changes the experience of using AI. It becomes about text messaging, basically, rather than necessarily sitting and building at a computer. Very cool. And then the third one, again, OpenClaw, scheduled tasks. 80% of the people who are using OpenClaw and talking about their kind of their amazing OpenClaw use cases were just doing cron jobs. They were doing scheduled tasks. They would have it do some work overnight. Then when they woke up, they'd have a full report, with what the competitors were doing, what they had to do for the day, potential speaking engagements they could do, what's the news, etc. That's stuff we can do with a cron job hooked to Claude Code. Claude have just made it easier by giving us scheduled tasks. So we can now set up those kind of things that we set up in OpenClaw just using Claude Code. Cowork specifically. So we'll build it into Cowork. So Claude can now complete recurrent tasks at specified times automatically, a morning brief, weekly spreadsheet updates, Friday team presentations. Again, super basic. I don't know why they didn't push this out earlier, but now it's here. Fantastic. So all three of these, to me, feel like they've looked at OpenClaw and thought, we should probably have those things, right? And within this week, they've released these 3 new features, which are all OpenClaw adjacent and make Claude Cowork and Claude Code much closer to the dream of OpenClaw, but more secure. Authorized, so you can actually use Opus 4.6 on this and not lose your account because you've been using it on OpenClaw. So this is exciting, and I think there's a lot of excitement to this. This is, if you watch my lives, if you saw my videos, I told you don't touch OpenClaw if you don't feel technically competent to do it. If you see the terminal and it's asking you to use brew to install a package and that freaks you out and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing here, I said weeks ago, don't. Just leave it for now, because we will have cleaner, professional, safer versions within a couple of weeks. And now here they are. So again, we have one from Manus called Manus Agent. We have Perplexity Computer. We have Claude Code has now been upgraded with all of these. And I'm sure we're going to be seeing a version of OpenClaw from ChatGPT, especially since they acquired. So yeah, they hired Peter Steinberger, the head of OpenClaw. So very, very cool. OpenClaw was a preview into what 2026 is going to look like, but now we're getting the adult version of that, which isn't going to nuke your inbox or start purchasing things on your credit card. So I'm excited about that. What I will do, because there's a lot here with these new features, I'm going to put together a guide about how to kind of get started with Cowork and to get started with Claude Code, because I know it's still a little bit intimidating. So I'll do one on Cowork in particular, and I'll do that for next week, and how we string all this together to basically create a version of OpenClaw, but without, risking our lives and our security and our privacy. Is this out? I've got Claude Code. Yes, it should be. Will Claude be banned soon? Maybe. Potentially, yes. So we talked about that in a lot of detail for about half an hour at the beginning of the live. The live will be on YouTube afterwards, and there'll be an edited version later today up on YouTube as well. So you can check out there. But the answer to will Claude be around next week is maybe. So we're talking about the features, these cool new features. This might not matter if Claude ceases to exist next week, which shouldn't be a maybe, but is, which is absolutely terrifying. Cybersecurity will be a nightmare. Is this because of Claude Code? So there were 2 things. There's the Mexican government. This is all this week, and the 7,000 Hoovers. Let's see if I can find them. Nope. So just this week, Claude Code was used for 2 things. Bro Bible? No, I'm not looking at Bro Bible. There we go. Guardian. Probably a bit better than the Bro Bible. Just this week, we've had 2 stories about how Claude Code has been used to take control of systems. One was an accident. This dude in Spain, I think he was trying to get into the software on his DJI robot Hoover. It's a little Roomba, but made by DJI, because he wanted to control it with a video game controller. Kind of a cool idea. So you can drive it around the house, you can chase your cat, whatever. You can bother your partner by ramming it into the ankles. So he wanted to set up a little Xbox controller. So he used Claude Code to open up the software and to help him control it with a controller. And he built this out, and Claude Code is like, cool, done. You can now drive around your 7,000 vacuum cleaners using your game controller. Which vacuum cleaner do you want to drive? And he's like, what? I don't have 7,000. And Claude's like, yeah, sure you do. You've got 7,000. What had happened is, because of the way the software had been put together, not very well, he'd gained access to 7,000 vacuum cleaners around the world, including their cameras, and was now able to access their systems. And being a good guy, he wrote to DJI. I think he talked to a tech newspaper, and he wrote to DJI and he said, "Hey, you guys might want to look into this." But it gives you an idea of how powerful Claude Code is, in that it could just rip through the software, and it found this vulnerability. There's also the question of, lots of people like to say, well, AI code will never be as good as human. I wouldn't be that surprised if the software inside of these DJI Romos was human written, and the AI just ripped through the human written code, found a vulnerability, and gave him access to 7,000 robots by mistake. But that was one of the kind of funny examples of Claude Code just tearing through some cybersecurity protections. The other one that's a little less fun was somebody used Claude Code to get into the Mexican government's. Let's see this one. So many pop-ups. This is why we don't use the internet. That's why we don't use Google. Hacker steals huge data trove from Mexico using Anthropic's Claude. So a Spanish language hacker manipulated Claude ChatGPT into carrying out detailed hacks into numerous government agencies. He's stolen, or they have stolen a total of 150 gigabytes of Mexican government data, including data related to 195 million taxpayer records, voter records, government employee credentials, and civil registry files. Yep. So these tools are incredibly powerful, and somebody was saying a cybersecurity nightmare in chat. Yes. Yeah. And we have to remember that in countries like the UK, the head of cybersecurity, let me pull it up, UK salary, they were hiring one. No, that's not it. The kind of governmental head of cybersecurity in the UK was hired a couple of years ago. This is it, with a £57,000 salary. We need to take these things more seriously. Yeah, security is going to be a massive issue because of Claude Code, because of these tools. Right, I'm going to finish up in a bit. Hey Jeff, great video, way behind, and it's early, so catching up, and you'll be done. I hope we get Anthropic to stick around though. Yeah, we'll find out what's happening with Anthropic today, because the Pentagon's deadline is Friday. Sorry, the deadline Pentagon gave to Anthropic was today, and Anthropic have told them to shove it. So we'll find out how that resolves. Are all of these available in the free version? Do you mean these Claude Code, memory, remote control, and Cowork scheduled tasks? No. So I know a remote is on research preview for max users. So you have to be spending $100 or $200 a month. Cowork is available on all paid plans. So this will include scheduled tasks are on all paid plans, and auto memory is on I'm not sure. Probably any use of Claude Code. So it'll be on a paid plan. You can use Claude. That's a new one. You can use Claude Code. This is because I've said Claude 150 times in the last hour. You can use Claude Code on the $20 a month plan, but you will run out of usage very quickly. Maybe you'll be able to work with it for half an hour, and then it's gone. So realistically, for Claude Code, you kind of need to be on the $100 a month or $200 a month. Where on earth do you see this going in the next 30 years, longer term? No idea. No idea. And anyone who says they do, I think, is bullshitting. So I actually studied history. That's my degree. I studied history at Oxford. And so I like to think I have a vague understanding of the kind of longer term threads of history. We don't know. We haven't had a technology like this. So it's Yuval Harari, the guy who wrote *Sapiens*. So he talks about history. He's a historian, and he tends to think about big history, so wide movements of civilization, technologies, etc. I think he was right when he said that normally we have an idea of where history is going. We know roughly the direction. If we're going, towards autocracy, if we're going, if it's good times, we kind of know what's generally going to happen over the next 10 years or so. In previous periods, now with artificial intelligence, all bets are off. Like we just can't guess what our history is going to look like 10 years from now, let alone 30, 50 years from now. This is a technology that fundamentally shifts our relationship with everything, with knowledge, with intelligence. So we don't know, and it's getting better faster and faster and faster and faster. So any predictions, any speculations about where we are going, look out of date very quickly. So whenever you see people speculating what the next couple of years are going to look like, if you see one of those speculations from 2023, 2024, it looks so out of date already. Things are moving extremely fast. Where are you moving to, Kyle, and why? I'm moving to Cyprus. So I'm moving to Cyprus in about a month or so. Number of reasons. UK weather, not great. The last 2 months have been particularly bad. My partner is Cypriot, so it makes it nice and easy to move over. I'm going to live near her family. Tax, cannot avoid the fact that the taxes in the UK are very high and the taxes in Cyprus are not. They're very good. And my business is primarily, it's entirely remote. There's no particular reason why I need to be in the UK to operate it. It's a global business, and as long as I have my laptop, I can do my business. So doing it in a warm country with nice fresh food, where the taxation is much more generous, is kind of a no-brainer. And I'd like to be able to actually save up enough money to be able to buy a house, which you can't do in London. Even though I am what would be considered a very high earner in the UK, I can't just buy a house. The cost of living and the cost of doing anything in London now is so prohibitively expensive. And again, I say this as a high earner, that everything's out of whack, and it feels like everyone is kind of surviving rather than thriving. So I just kind of want to break that loop by going and living elsewhere. That said, throughout most of my 20s, I did not live in the UK. I lived in America for 3 or 4 years, China for 2 years, Vietnam for about 3 years. So I've only been back in the UK for 5 or so years, and it feels again like time to be elsewhere. The general vibe is a bit depressed in the UK. I'm sure I've got people from the UK here who maybe you will sympathise with this. The fact that it's been raining non-stop for the last 2 months helps me with this decision as well. I made the decision before, but then it just rained and rained and rained and rained. It's like, okay, this is the right decision. And it's like 19 degrees in Cyprus right now. If you wanted to coach people who could only afford $20 per month, what tool would you focus on? Anti-gravity. So Claude Code, very, very, very expensive, very good. Instead, though, go and grab yourself anti-gravity. So anti-gravity is from Google. Its price is, we love this, it is $0 per month, the best price. That is going to give you access to Gemini 3.1 Pro, Gemini Flash, Claude Sonnet, and Opus 4.6. Obviously, you're going to get a limited usage, but it's going to give you access. And GPT OSS, which is the open source version of ChatGPT, which isn't very good, so I wouldn't worry about that. So this is free. Great, and you can build with this. You can also use AI Studio, which is also Google. Google have a lot of really good tools that are free. They just don't tell anyone about them. This is the problem with Google. They have so much stuff. They have so many vibe coding tools, agentic engineering tools, that it becomes confusing to hold them all in your mind. They have Jules, they have Opal, they have Gems, they have this Google Studio, and then inside Google Studio they have the build mode, they have anti-gravity, and I'm probably missing a few more. So once you know where to look for them, they're great. So grab yourself anti-gravity. It is free, and that is available on, I think it's on PC. Yeah, it's on PC, Mac, Windows, and Linux. Or use this build mode inside of Google AI Studio. Really good place to start. This is basically lovable. It's just a chat interface, but free, which is good. We love that. And limited to Gemini models, but that is fine because Gemini 3 is good. So you can use, here we go, Gemini 3.1 Pro preview. Oh, it allows you to choose the framework. Oh, that's really cool. And you can also hook up your microphone. So I can connect my microphone and I can talk to it and say, hey, this is what I want to build. So very, very cool. Highly recommend them if you are not, if you don't want to spend any money. We can't, sorry, I love this. Somebody asked, what are we going to be doing in 30 years? One other person responded, we can't guess what we'll be doing in 3 months. And then finally, we can't guess whether we'll be able to access Claude or not in 3 hours. I mean, 100%, like 30 years, who knows? I don't know what I'm doing on Monday. So this all comes back to the idea that you just need to be ready. You need to have options available to you. So if you just have a 9 to 5 and you're reliant on that 9 to 5, that's risky. That is very fragile because potentially that job will not exist. It could be replaced by AI. Potentially your company will not exist, especially if it's not embracing AI. It could get wiped out by competitors who are using AI or totally new company. And then finally, potentially your industry will not exist in a couple of years' time. Even if you've trained in that industry for the last 10, 20 years, that doesn't matter if the industry gets wiped out. So we cannot be dependent on one source of income anymore. So I don't know what's coming. I do know that if you are dependent on one source of income, you're going to be in trouble, because if that gets knocked out by whatever's coming, you don't have any fallbacks. So right now you need to start other things. You need to start learning to build. You need to start hopefully building your own business, freelancing, consulting, getting other sources of cash coming in. So at least you have optionality. You have different things that you can do if and when AI hits us. So I have 6 or 7 sources of income. I know that AI is going to wipe out some of them. That's fine, because I will have more to fall back on, and at least I'll have some wiggle room. So that's what you need to focus on. You need to accept we don't really know what's going to happen. So what can I do to get ready for that randomness? I was thinking the same. I built apps with Anti-Gravity and AI Studio. Yeah, they're great. They're really good. And the fact that they're free, it kind of makes them hard to beat. Claude Code is a lot more powerful, and Codex 5.3 from ChatGPT, a lot more powerful. They are better harnesses, but they cost money. So start with Anti-Gravity, start with AI Studio. If you find you need that more power and you can justify the expense, then you can move up to other tools, but get started with the free ones. Absolutely. Is Anthropic going to cave to Pete today? No. Mike, did you not see the statement? Go and have a look at the statement. If you Google Anthropic News Statement, Department of War, Dario told him to go shove it. I covered it at the beginning of the live in detail, so you can watch that. But he basically said, where is it? Regardless, these threats do not change our position. We cannot, in good conscience, accede to their request. Dario told them to sling their hook, basically. So today is the deadline, and the Pentagon has said you must accede by today. Yesterday, Dario put out the statement telling them to piss off, basically. So the ball is back in the court for the Pentagon, and we'll see what happens over the next few hours. But it's fantastic. Yeah, go and look at it, Mike. It's on their Twitter, or you can look at Statement Department of War on Anthropic. It's well worth reading. He basically said, we're the patriots. We're the ones who want to deploy this safely. We think national security is really important. That's why we will not allow surveillance of domestic within the US, US citizens, and we will not deploy autonomous weaponry that could harm US warfighters. So he's throwing it back on them, saying that they are the non-patriotic ones and that Anthropic are the true Americans. It's fantastic. It's unfortunately it's such a high-scale argument. Otherwise, it would be a lot funnier. But as people have been asking in chat, will we have Claude next week? Don't know. I don't know. Strange how the other company said nothing about this requirement. Yep, and happy to take the money. I've done a few videos on this, pointing out this exact fact. Last summer, the Pentagon gave contracts to 4 AI companies. Only one of them, Anthropic, is saying, hey, we're not happy about this. One of them has drawn up these red lines. So the other 3, we haven't heard a peep from. That's Google, that's OpenAI, and that is XAI. Now, we don't know what projects have been put on. They might have been put on less problematic projects, at least within their remit. We don't know. Obviously, this is very secret, but we do know that there hasn't been any contention. So if they were put on similar projects as Anthropic were, they have not objected. So the silence does tell us something. If the US government puts them on a supply chain blacklist, almost every large Western corporation will have to drop them also. Yep. They're basically blacklisted. So it explicitly stops them from doing business with government departments. That's fine, they can probably survive that. But it also means any company who has links to the government, which is most of the large American corporations, will also need to stop doing business with them. There's a certain legal power to that, but also reputational risk as well. So companies like Amazon have invested into Anthropic. What does that mean about their investment? Will they pull out? Probably. It's too risky to be associated with them. And some people were saying, oh, let's bring them to Europe, That's not going to make any difference because they'll lose their customer base and they won't be able to operate and sell to American companies, the vast majority of American companies. They also don't sell to China because they decided not to. And Dario has been very anti-Chinese in general. So that's not on the table either. So their market would be reduced to Europe and the rest of the world, which is not going to be enough revenue for them to keep the lights on, let alone stay at the forefront of AI development. They probably wouldn't be able to buy from NVIDIA either. So their GPU supply would be cut because NVIDIA is an American company that has ties with the US government. So it would be game over if they get declared a supply chain risk. There's also the risk that they will be that the Pentagon will use the Defense Production Act, which is normally used in crisis situations, in times of war, to basically seize a company, or you'd use it to seize a factory, for example, and turn it over to producing tank shells or whatever. So these are extraordinary measures being threatened against Anthropic, and I think Amodei is very right to call this out as, hey, this is I thought this is the land of the free. This is not very American, what you guys are doing right now. So that is the tone of his statement, is basically setting up Anthropic as the true patriots here, calling this stuff out as incredibly problematic, and then reminding us at the end that we remain ready to continue our work to support the national security of the United States. They're putting themselves in the position, and the message is that Anthropic are the good guys here, and we're the ones who actually care about the safety of American lives. So it's a fantastic statement. Go and read it. Makes you realize how brave their stance is. Since Anthropic's entire USP in market is mostly B2B, yes, opposed to others like OpenAI and Google, which is much more B2C, 100%. OpenAI is basically a B2C. They have consumers, which is why they're switching over to the ad model. They have to. Whereas Anthropic has a much smaller user base. I think it's in the tens of millions rather than hundreds of millions. The last number I saw was 30 million, which compared to 90 million for OpenAI. Totally different business model. And it is, as you're saying, Tom Hawk, it's B2B. It's selling to businesses, it's selling to software developers, it's selling API, tokens for Claude Code. Totally different business. And being declared a supply chain risk means it's game over. There's no way to come back from that. Yeah. Brigid says, thankfully someone with power is standing up to the US. I think that's a very interesting point, is that the very fact that an AI company can stand up to the Department of War and say, no, that is telling. That these companies, these AI companies, can even think about pushing back on the government in such a way. That tells us a little bit about the dynamic here, and how important these companies are to the economy. to national security, to the future of a country like America, because a lot is being staked on these AI companies. Most of the financial resources are rightfully or wrongfully being put into these AI companies right now. If we pull Claude out from this, if Anthropic goes down, that might trigger a crash. This might be the popping of the bubble. I don't know if the government realize this. I don't know if the fact that they're throwing around all of these threats suggests that they are not being fully rational about this, but this could be it. If Anthropic could get taken off the table, if Claude Code is no longer available, this could bring down the whole bubble. This might be the pinprick that we've been waiting for, which is an absolute disaster for America as a whole and going to be fantastic for China. It's going to put China in an incredibly good position, let's put it that way. I hope they stand firm. American government needs them. Somebody's doing the right thing, because it's not the US politicians who could be doing more. Yeah. Ben says, these days US government is anything but rational from the top down. Yeah, this is my worry. This is my concern. I don't know what Trump's position is on this. I don't know if he's commented. I don't know if he knows what's going on, or if he's just leading Pete to deal with it. We will find out in the next few hours. But come Monday, when I do this live, we could be looking at a very different landscape. This is why I've been so surprised that people haven't been talking about this much, because it's kind of a big deal. It's a really big deal. It does make you wonder, as LLMs become more consequential, national security and potential risks, that nations and governments will ultimately force public ownership and government ownership. So China did that from the start. So China has golden shares in every single tech company, because they know that even with things like social media, it has a huge impact on the society. So for years, China has had stakes in these companies, which means they want them to do well from a financial point of view, but they also have a controlling stake to keep an eye on them, basically. And I wouldn't be that surprised if we see something similar in the West. If Anthropic takes a hit, it will be a disaster for the USA. Yep. We will lose something critical. Yes, it is the best AI model. They are the best lab. They are just constantly putting out the best tools. There's a reason why Claude Code has been used to by Chinese cybersecurity to hack into American companies. There's a reason why the Mexican government was hacked recently by Claude Code. Claude Code is just the best tool. From a cybersecurity point of view, from a creation point of view, it just blows everything out of the water. And if that is whipped off the table next week, that's going to have an impact on the market. It's going to have an impact on everyone. I don't think it's even good news for OpenAI or Google or XAI. I think it will be a disaster because it's going to demolish the financial markets. It's huge. No idea why mainstream media hasn't picked it up. Yep. I don't know. Anyway, let's we'll find out in the next few hours. I will post some videos about it as and when it happens. They go out of date so quickly though. Yesterday I put some short videos out on TikTok saying, oh, it looks like Anthropic have conceded to the government. And then saw the statement, it's like, oh, nope. How is China competing with the US in everything? How is it possible? Some 50 years ago, it's one of the poorest countries. So I've lived in China for 2 years. I speak Mandarin Chinese. Short answer is they plan things long term. So when China decides to do something, it gets it done. So right now, sustainable energy, for example. In the West, we have been arguing about sustainable energy and solar panels and wind farms and nuclear power for decades. We don't actually build anything. We just kind of argue about it and we set targets, and our politicians go to the Paris Accords and puff their chests out and feel very good about themselves. But then they don't actually spend any money building these things. China will decide, okay, we're going to use all sustainable energy by, I think it's 2030 is their target to become neutral. They will get there. They will get that work done. So they will set a large target and they will just do it. The one that I find hilarious is the Green Belt. No one in the West has heard of this. No, not the Green Belt in the UK. Green Belt in China. The Great Green Wall, excuse me. So the Great Green Wall it's the largest reforestation effort in human history. and it is more reforestation, growing trees than I think the rest of the world combined ever. Nobody's heard of it, but they just get on with doing these things. So the Great Green Wall, or the 3 North Shelter Forest Program, it's a series of human-planted windbreaking forest strips in China designed to hold back the expansion of the Gobi Desert and to provide timber to the local population. The program started in 1978 and is planned to finish in 2050. In the West, we can't think that far ahead, in part because our politicians get re-elected every 4 years and they are spent most of their time trying to get re-elected, but we just don't have these kind of timelines. This is a, what's that, 28, that's 78-year project to reforest this area, at which point it would be expected to have created a vast green barrier spanning approximately 4,828 kilometers long and up to 1,500 kilometers wide, and it will encompass 88 million acres of forest. We just don't do stuff like this. And they're on track. They've just been pushing forward and growing these trees for the last 40 years and getting on with it. Whereas in the UK, we will, grow a couple of hundred trees and our politicians be like, we planted new forest, everybody, and it will cost us $100 million. China just gets on with doing things. I remember when I was living there, this was years ago, but they were moving towards electric vehicles. Because they decided that's where we're going. We're going to start domestic production. We're going to make sure all of our buses, all of our cars, all of our public transport is electric. And in just a couple of years while I was there, they just replaced everything. So all the buses went from petrol to electric in like a year. And then suddenly the petrol cars started to disappear from the road, and these companies like BYD started to appear. They just get things done very, very, very quickly. Whereas we don't have that kind of long-term vision or the ability to execute in the West. In the UK, famously, we have this one railway track that we've been trying to build, the HS2, for... God, how long have we been doing the HS2 for? One railway. It's been under construction since 2019. I think they were planning it for years before. It will be finished in 2033. Oh, sorry, no. This was delayed following a program reset in 2025 with no new completion date announced. So China, in this is going to take us 70 years to build this one railway. In that time, China is going to grow 800 million trees. And I think in this, since 2019, they've added about, I think it's 6,500 miles of railway, high-speed railway in China. How long is the HS2? How many miles is it? I can't even see how long it is. 140 miles. So we can't even build one 140-mile long railway. They've built 6,500 miles. I think it's more than that. It's probably 10,000 by now. And the same with sustainable energy. They built a solar panel recently, a solar panel farm which is the size of Bristol. It's called getting things done. That's how they're competing with the US and everything. They've been steadily doing the work for all of these years. Yeah, the West thinks hand to mouth now, not for people or generations. So I was in Beijing. Last time I was in Beijing was last year. Spotless. Like, it's really clean. Everyone's out having fun in the evenings, eating out and stuff like that. It's a totally different life. And we kind of assume in the West, like, oh, they're all poor over there. And it's like, no. So I highly recommend people travel to China. It's tricky if you don't speak Chinese, but it's very doable. And there's now a visa-free travel option for people from the UK. Really cool to visit, and makes you realise just how much the West is struggling sometimes. Singapore too. When you go to Singapore, you're like, whoa, why is everything so nice? Why aren't you all quietly desperate? Right, enough of that. Thank you guys. I'm going to finish up. I'll have some updates, I'm sure, on what's going on with Pentagon. If you follow me on TikTok, Instagram, various places, I will have videos. And all of this will be in the newsletter as well. So make sure you're signed up. It's at aiwithkyle.com. Here, and click on join the community. You get a whole bunch of free stuff as well. So a bunch of library playbooks. There's 8 courses in here as well. The daily AI news, guides about how you can learn artificial intelligence. There's actually an easier guide. Where is it? AI learning guide. So this walks you through some really good videos that you should be watching, some books, etc. It's all here on the website. So come to aiwithcarl.com, sign up, and I will see you on the inside. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful weekend. Cheers.